Okay, guys, this will be objective 27. We are going to graph and write lines that are horizontal and vertical. Okay, I told you yesterday we looked mainly at lines that either had a positive slope or a negative slope to it. Today we need to go back and look at what do the equations look like that are horizontal and vertical. Okay, and then we're also going to look at, will every single equation be in slope-intercept form? Have you ever seen an equation that's not in slope-intercept form? Yes. Can somebody give me an example of an equation that is not in slope-intercept form? What is slope-intercept form? Y equals mx plus b. So give me an equation that's not in that form. I still think that's mx plus b. What about this? What if you had 2x plus 3y equals 12? Is that in y equals mx plus b? You sure? Why not? It's not solved for y. So my question here is, what's the slope? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you, why can't you tell me, everybody says, Ms. Gordon, I thought the number in front of the x was the slope. That's only if it is in slope-intercept form. It's got to be in y equals mx plus b form. So what we're going to do on part 2 is we're going to learn to take equations that look like this, and we're going to change them and write them in this form. From there, then you would be able to tell me the slope. Okay? So that's what we're going to do in part 2. All right, horizontal lines. Now, my advice to you is, do not analyze this, memorize this. Okay? Some things, you know, it's good to understand, you know, why it is that way and this, what, where, and how. And then some things it's better to just memorize it and know it. Does that make sense? And I would say this is one of those things. So, the equation of a horizontal line might look like y equals 3. These are just examples. Y equals 8. It might look like y equals 1. It might look like y equals negative 5. What do you notice about this? Well, y equals a number, right? And why does this look different? Does this look like a normal equation? Does this look like what we looked at yesterday? It's missing an x, right? It doesn't even have an x. So can someone explain to me what happened to the x? It got replaced by a number? Almost. If most of our lines follow y equals mx plus b, explain to me, what's the slope of a horizontal line? What is it? If slope is 0, what happened to the x? It got multiplied by 0. So if this were a horizontal line and the slope was 0, let's take this one right here, then what happens to this? It basically cancels out and goes away. And so really, what is the negative 5? The negative 5 is it's your b, and it's your y-intercept. So if I wanted to graph this, let me explain this. Where on the y-axis is negative 5? Down 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you know that the slope was 0, you know what kind of line is it? It's a 0 line. It's a horizontal line. And I'll tell you how I remember these, okay? That's kind of explaining how this is, why it is the way it is. But I'll tell you, I remember how to graph these because it's always opposite from the axis. If it says y equals a number, what direction do we think the line should go? Just in my mind. I think it should go this way because that's the way the y-axis runs, right? But it always goes opposite from that. It's opposite. Another way people look at it is that the line has to intersect. It has to cross the y-axis. So if the y-axis is running this way, in order to cross it, then that means the line has to go this way. So, however, I always remember that it's opposite from the y-axis. But I wouldn't memorize these. I would say these, I say, are your weird ones. When you're missing an x or you're missing a y, that's when I say these are those weird ones. It's either horizontal or it's vertical. Which one is it? And so when it says y, I know it's opposite from the axis, so I know it's a horizontal line. Okay? All right, so the slope is 0. You need to know that. Okay, you need to know that horizontal lines have a slope of 0. Which we've already talked about. And then you need to know what the equation looks like. So let's look at this. We'll make this example 1. Okay, you can graph it on your paper, or you can graph it on the actual graph paper that I gave you. Okay, so to graph this, again, 5, because if we made this into slope-intercept, this would be 0x plus 5. That makes 5 your y-intercept. So I'll tell you, the way I look at it is you have to go where y is 5. Where is y 5? Up, down, right, or left? Up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, because it says y, I think this way, but it is actually this way. It's the opposite. So it will go like so. Did everybody understand that? Any questions? Easy enough? These are easy, but people forget about them. So that's why I say you need to really memorize them and know them. Okay? All right, let's go to vertical lines. Vertical lines, just the opposite. They look like x equals the number. They look like x equals 3, or x equals 8, or x equals 1, or x equals -4, or x equals -5. So to me, I say that these look weird because they're missing the y. And they look even that much weirder because normally our equations are in y equals. This isn't in y equals. This was in x equals. Okay? So I say this one looks weird. It is a vertical line. We know with a vertical line the slope is, but what's the slope? Good, Kelly. Undefined. Okay, the slope is undefined. You need to know that. You need to know that the slope is undefined with a vertical line. Any questions? And then if we looked at the graph, to graph this, this will be example 2. First of all, you got to go where x is 5. Where is x 5? Up, down, right, or left? X. Right 5 because it's x on the x-axis. So you got to go to the right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put your point. Then I say to myself, because it says x, I generally think horizontal because of the x-axis, but it is actually opposite. It is opposite from the axis. So your line will look like so. Okay? I always tell my students, you're never going to want to draw, like, what if I had plotted a point here and then drawn, and I got confused and I drew a horizontal line? Where would it have drawn on? It had been on the axis itself. You will never ever want to draw a line on the axis unless it's equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, I don't care whether it's horizontal or vertical. If it's horizontal, it'll be on the x-axis. If it's equal to 0 and it's vertical, it'll be on the y-axis. But you will never ever want to draw the line on the axis unless it's equal to 0. Okay? All right, so we'll make this example 3. Just graph a couple of these. First thing you do is you go to where y is -3. Now you got to think direction and you got to think variable. Where is y -3? Is that up, down, right, or left? Down 3. When it says y, what direction do we think? We think up and down, but it is actually opposite from that. It's opposite from the axis. So this would be a horizontal line with a slope of 0. Very good. Any questions? Okay. If x is equal to -2, what direction is x -2? Be very careful. Up, down, right, or left? Left. Left 2. Because it says x, we think x-axis, but it is actually vertical. It's the opposite of that. So this would be a vertical line with an undefined slope. Very good. Okay. You do this one by yourself. Oops. There we go. What direction do I plot my first point? Up, down, right, or left? Right one. And then what way do I draw my line? Up and down. So what kind of slope does that have? Undefined. You need to know those. You need to memorize those. I'm telling you, we're going to be talking y mx plus b, y equals mx plus b, like every day. But occasionally you will see problems that look like this. You need to say to yourself, that doesn't look like mx plus b. That's a weird one. It's either horizontal or vertical. Which one is it? And you need to remember what I'm telling you today. How many of you think this is really simple? You wouldn't believe how many people confuse this stuff all the time, okay? So make sure you memorize this, okay, and know it. Shay, what direction am I going to go? Nowhere. Why? Because it's 0, so I'm not going to go anywhere. Then, because it says y equals, what direction, Brian, will I draw my line? Why? Why? Because it's y, and I thought the y-axis ran this way. You go the opposite from the axis. So I thought I said I would never draw a line on the axis unless it's equal to 0. Okay, unless it's equal to 0. Okay, questions? You feel okay with horizontal and vertical lines? Okay, part 1 accomplished. Let's go to part 2. So I gave one similar to this earlier, and the question is what's the slope? Now, we don't know right now because it is not in the right form. We have got to rearrange this equation into y equals mx plus b. Have we rearranged and solved for y ever before? Have we solved equations for other variables and moved things around ever before? Yes, we have. So we've done this before, but we're going to talk about how this applies to y equals mx plus b in slope-intercept form today. Okay, but you have already done this when we solved literal equations. Okay, but what I'm going to explain to you is this. I'm going to explain it kind of like a game, and I'm going to tell you, you're still going to follow your rules. Like number 1 is parentheses. Okay, you're still going to do that. Number 2, you're going to take all your, if you had fractions, depending on what you had, you could get rid of your fractions. 3, you're going to take all your separate terms to the other side, and so forth and so on. And then 5, if you need to divide, divide. Okay? But I'm going to kind of explain it more like a game today and rearranging our drawer. How many of you have ever cleaned out a drawer and rearranged it? Like, let's just say I have my drawer back at my desk and I have paper clips and pencils and staples. And so what would I do with all my paper clips? I would take them and I would put them here. And then I would take all my pencils and pull them together and put them here. Does that make sense? And so basically what's going to happen is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure all my pieces and parts are in the right place. So my question to you, ready to minute to win it? Here we go. Level 1. My question to you is the y on the left side of the equals? Yes. So level 1 complete. Is the x on the right side of the equals? No. So what we're going to do, and this is taking our separate terms over, we're going to take our x and we're going to move it and we're going to squeeze it in right there because it needs to be in front of the 8, right? It needs to be beside the equals. You need to have your x right beside the equals. Okay, so when I squeeze this in, this becomes a negative 3x and then a plus 8. The slope is not negative 3. Huh? No, the slope is not 3. I'm not done yet. Have I solved for y equals? Is there anything left with y? Yeah. Okay, so let me finish my game here. Level 2 complete. We moved the x over. Okay. Is my constant or my number by itself at the very end? Level 3 complete. Then all you have to do from there is look and see, is there anything left with the y? Yes, we are timesing by 2, so to get rid of it, we will divide by 2. Now we know, watch this. Remember I talked how sometimes we needed to divide and conquer? Okay. Do I need to split this apart? Why? Because the 8 and the 2 can be simplified. So we need to do negative 3x divided by 2 plus 8 divided by 2 and simplify. So what's really my slope? Negative 3 over 2 times x. Do y'all realize that that's the same thing? That negative 3x divided by 2 is the same thing as negative 3 halves times x. Okay, the x is technically, if I did x over 1, isn't the x in the top? Okay, and then plus 4. Is it in mx plus b form now? Yes. So my question to you, if this were now all the directions here said, is write the equation in slope-intercept form. So that's our answer for that question. But what if the question on the quiz tomorrow, hint, 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 says, what's the slope? Negative 3 over 2 is your slope. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So here we're going to do, we want to get it in y equals mx plus b form. So we're going to play our game. Is the y on the left side of the equals? Yes. Is the x on the right side of the equals? We're really good at this game. Is the number all by itself? Yes. So is the y all by itself? Is there anything left with the y? A negative 1. So technically you can do two ways. I'll show you the technical way, and then I'm going to show you the easy way. Okay? The technical way, there is a negative 1, so what would I do? Divide by negative 1, and so y equals, what's 4 divided by negative 1? Negative 4x. What's negative 1 divided by negative 1? Positive 1. So, am I done? Is it in mx plus b form? Y equals mx plus b? Yes. So, that's my answer for that question, but if this were the quiz tomorrow, hint, 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 if you circled your answer there and said that's my answer, I'll count it wrong because the question's going to say, what's the slope? From there, you have to go and say m equals negative 4. Okay, negative 4. So, you want to see the easy way? If you change the sign on one side, you got to change the sign on the other, right? So, if all I need to do is get rid of a negative, if I change the sign here, I need to change the sign here and here. Just change all the signs in each of the terms. Okay? But technically what you're doing is dividing by negative 1, which changes signs. That's all dividing by negative 1 does. Okay? Oops. Do you want to attempt this one on your own? So my question is, what's the slope? Okay. My question is, what's the slope? Very careful. How many got positive 5 over 3 as their slope? Good. How many got negative? So I had a couple. So watch this. Okay. Oop, that's not a good color. How about this? So I always draw what I'm looking to because you're going to learn other forms. So depending on what form I want slope-intercept form, then that way I can play my game because we're going to play our game in all the different forms. Does that make sense? And we're going to take it piece by piece and make sure that everything is in its place. You need to have your y in front. You need to have your equals next. You need to have your x term next. And then you need to have your constant. Okay? So, is the y on the left side of the equals? Here's the equals. Is the y on the left? Yes. So, level 1 complete. Is the x on the right side? No. So, we need to take this 5x, and I didn't see a lot of people like circling it and drawing the arrow as to where you're putting it, and that may cause maybe some careless errors. But when this 5x goes over, I'm going to squeeze it in there. You know what this reminds me of? Have you ever like seen like a bench of people and the bench was full, but you wanted to have a seat in the middle of your friends, so you went like this and squeezed yourself in? Anybody ever done that? Okay, thank you. Maybe it's a girl thing. I don't know. Anyway, so you squeeze yourself in, and so what do you do with the people that's on either side of you? You just push them over. So what we're going to do, first of all, what am I left with here? A negative 3y. When this 5x comes over, it becomes negative 5x. I'm wondering if that's not where you went wrong. No? Okay. And we're going to take this negative 9 and just push them over because I'm just squeezing that 5x in, and so the negative 9 gets pushed over. Okay? And then from there, we need to divide by negative 3. And so You can divide the whole thing by -3, but when we divide and conquer, aren't both of these being divided by -3? So if you want to, you could go ahead and divide and conquer that and put both of them over -3. And so those simplify. A negative over a negative is a positive 5 over 3x. And a -9 divided by -3 is positive 3. Just to review, so there's lots of things you could tell me from that. Number one, from that form, you can tell me the slope is 5/3. You could tell me that the y-intercept is 3. You could tell me that the picture of it, just as a review from yesterday, if I wanted to graph this, where would I go? Positive 3. Is that up, down, right, or left? Up 3, because this is the y-intercept. And then from there, where do I go? I don't have room. I don't have room to go up 5. Oh, you can go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then left. Why left? Because a negative over a negative is a positive. And so you could tell me what the picture of that. There's lots of things you can do with that and tell me just from that one equation. Is everybody okay with that? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, you try this one. 3/4, positive 3/4? Yep. Can anyone tell me the entire equation in slope-intercept form? What'd you get, Dylan? Y equals 3/4x plus 5/2. Everybody okay with that? Okay, and so the purpose of this, number one, is it did, things were in a little bit different order, and that's okay. Okay, basically they took all the terms and pushed them to one side, which means you had nothing on the other side. But if you play your game, it's not that big of a deal. So if I want y equals mx plus b, is my y on the left side? Yes, level 1 complete. Is my x on the right side? Nah. So let's take it and move it over and squeeze it over here. So I have 10 minus 4y equals negative 3x. Do I need the plus 0? No. Okay. Is my b at the very end? No. So I need to take my number, my b, and push it all the way to the end, and when it comes over, it becomes a negative. From there, to get y by itself, I need to divide by -4. The entire thing is being divided by -4, but you'll probably want to split it every time so you can tell what's the slope and what's the y-intercept. Does that make sense? So you're going to want to divide and conquer every time. So I'm just going to go ahead and divide that by -4 and that by -4. So negative divided by negative is a positive 3/4 x. And then plus negative divided by negative. And if you simplify it, 5/2. Okay. Questions? Are you okay with this? Not okay with this? Blank stare at Miss Corns. Okay. Everybody okay? All right. Last one. Take a look at this one. Is this something you think you can handle by yourself? I mean, it looks a little different, but nothing that we can't handle. What would be your first step? Parentheses. What do I mean by parentheses? You got to distribute the 3 to the x and the 3 to the 2, and then from there you have to play your game. Make sure to combine any like terms that you can. So y equals 3x plus 11. Okay? And if I said to you, what's the slope? You would say 3. Okay? If I asked you to graph it, could you? Where would I start? Start at 11. Plot that point, and then from there I would go up 3 and to the right 1. Or you could go down 3 and left 1. Okay? Any questions on this? Okay, so there we go.